This is John Munson with Real Ruckus Radio and Podcast. Welcome today. We're glad that today we have a special guest that's going to talk about an issue that has become, at least in my career, probably the most pressing challenge that faces rural communities today. And it's the challenge of mental health. And there's a lot of these issues today. I think most people have it in somebody they know or in their families. I lost a sister to a challenge in this, lost her life. Her challenge in mental health. And so we've wanted to talk about this a long time. And I think the last thing we want to do is put a cover over it and hide it. It's to talk about it. And today I have my pastor from my church who wrote a book about this, Pastor Steve Larson. Pastor, thank you so much for being here. I have wanted to do this for the last year or more to talk to you, but we needed to get a little bit closer to the date that this book was going to come out, and we're here. So this is going to be fantastic. So welcome. Really glad you're here. Yeah.
Thank you. It's a privilege to be here.
Well, I'm glad that you took time to do this. Yeah. And what I want to talk about today is I want to start with letting people know a little bit more about you and a little bit more about your background. First of all, let's start a little bit with what you do and a little bit about your family.
Yes. So I pastor Community Celebration Church, which is in between Byron and Casson. Mm-hmm. I'm coming up on my 30th year there. And I have my wife, Tammy. We've been married for about 30 years as well. And then I have Dalton and Miracle are my two kids. So.
You have some pets too, don't you?
Yes.
Are they your real kids?
Yes.
I think so.
Well, there's a story behind that. I went to a pastor's training once, and they said that if you're speaking to a bunch of people, you have to be an interesting person and have things to talk about. They said, if you're not, get a dog. So I have about 2 dogs and some cats to
That's pretty good.
To talk about.
That's a pretty good story. I do like that. So, but I've known you. You have said though as well, and I heard this from my previous boss, but one of the real mentors in my life too. He said that when you're in a position of leadership, you need to be a storyteller, somebody that can really tell the story properly in a way to compel people to act and to understand. And I think that that's really true. And I believe that all of my career, and certainly believe it here, or we wouldn't have a podcast. So today is really to discuss the story about mental health in rural communities. And it's a serious challenge. And what got you to the point where you decided that you need to write a book about this and help others? How did you get to that point?
Yeah. So back in 2002, I went through a severe depression and anxiety. And it was so bad that I was going to quit the ministry. And my overseer said, don't decide right now. Take a sabbatical, take a 3-month break. And then when you're done with that, make your decision. And when I got away and was able to just kind of heal, I asked the question, how do I never sink that low again when I got back into the pastorate? And I started, imagine someone drowning. That's how I felt mentally. Wow. Was just this sense of drowning in anxiety, drowning in depression. And I started to just collect tools to stay above ground and above water, I should say. And our district of churches asked me to start teaching this material to other pastors, which I've been doing now for about 20 years. But the book kind of grew out of that. And what I discovered is that if you would have asked me 25 years ago, Steve, how do I handle depression? I would have said, you need to pray and read your Bible more. Now, those things are very important. However, there's some other things you need to do as well. And that's where the 4 keys came in that we'll talk about later. So basically, this was just an attempt to help others to get out of or to cope with their mental health challenges.
Yeah. My sister lost her life to depression. It was caused heavily from breast cancer and the residual effects of all of that. And she'd already suffered from depression and so on. She said it was like a cloud she couldn't see out of. It was a dark cloud. Yeah. And she goes, she even said like a dark blanket over her. Yeah. And she couldn't find her way out of it. She couldn't see out of it. And it was just suffocating for her. Yeah. So, and we had a lot of questions about what was happening and so on. And it was just moment by moment, sometimes happy, sometimes not. And it was just a really difficult thing to understand. And so help us a little bit understand a little bit about, in a situation like that, or any other where people are suffering from depression, how do you help? How do you know?
How do you? Well, I think like in my own case, the things that I were normally interested in, I'm very much into reading. I'm interested in growing. And when I was depressed, I'd lost all interest. And in the book, I go over just the signs of depression and stuff. But I think when it comes to helping others, I think one of the biggest things is just being a safe place for them to be honest. I think one of the biggest challenges in mental health, I think it's gotten better, but is the stigma. We had a mental health support group at our church, and the leader got up and said, "What do you think of when you think of cancer?" And people started to say words like champion, hero, survivor. She then asked, "What do you think of when you think of mental illness?" People said, "Wacko, crazy." And we live in a culture that stigmatizes certain kind of brokenness over others. And we're all broken just in different ways. And I think to help someone, we need to provide an environment where they're safe to be honest. Here's how I'm actually doing.
Yep. Absolutely agree with all that. So as we address some of this then, so I appreciate that, hearing more about the stigma, because I do think that it's really real.
Yeah.
So you've been through all of this, you've seen through all of it, and you've taught some of this, but somebody asked you to write a book. Mm-hmm. So now you've written it and so on, but let's start with that first key. Is that a fair place to start?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Unless there's an overview that we should start with first and kind of create better context, but I'll let you decide.
Yeah.
But so where do we begin?
Yeah, so the first key is the spiritual key, and the book is based on Luke chapter 2:52, which says Jesus grew in wisdom, stature, favor with God, and favor with man.
Okay.
So those are the four keys: wisdom, mental, favor with God, spiritual, favor with man, relational, and then stature is physically. And the spiritual key is just the understanding that you're not walking alone, the understanding that God is with you. I know a big thing that helped me during my challenging time was sitting at the feet of Jesus and clarifying his values for my life. And what I tried to do was I tried to make decisions based on the values that he taught me at his feet, not my momentary feelings. And something that I learned is called living in the and. There are many Sundays I didn't feel like going to church, and I would say, I feel depressed, I feel anxious, and by the grace of God, I'm going to do this because that's one of my values. So that's a big component. For me, there's a bunch when it comes to the spiritual keys, but that's a big one that I learned was, Lord, help me to make value-based decisions, not feeling-based ones. Now, we do need to acknowledge our feelings. That's very important.
Sure.
But there are many days I just wanted to stay in bed, and there were days that I did.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that. But there's a lot that we go on in the chapters on spiritual, but the essence of it is developing a close connection with the Lord. Got it.
And as you move into the other realms, I mean, what comes next?
So the next key is the mental realm, and the mental. I've found that one of my hardest tasks in life is managing my mind, managing my thoughts. Someone has said that we're either the captain or the captive of our thoughts, and Martin Luther said that you can't control a bird flying over your head, but you can control it building a nest in your hair. And what I've discovered is that one of the hardest things to do is to manage my own mind, to manage my own thoughts. So the mental key is really about learning how to manage your mind, learning what do you do with those intrusive thoughts?
Yep.
Is huge. So in that section, we go over a bunch of mental health exercises. The first thing I do every morning is about 30 minutes of mental health exercises. The first thing I do is I write out my feelings and how am I feeling. You name it to tame it. If you don't acknowledge it, it's having an impact and you're not even aware of it. Next, I practice gratitude. Gratitude is one of the greatest mental health practices I know of. And then I'll spend time, what's bothering me and how can I reframe it in a more godly way. So a lot of it is just learning how to deal with your thoughts and your minds and things like that.
Yep, exactly. So as we continue to move on, next step
is the physical key. And here's something that I didn't understand 25 years ago, is that I thought having a mental health challenge had meant I'd done something wrong morally. And what I've learned is that depression and anxiety are not a moral issue, they're a medical one. In other words, a lot of times it can come from a biological source. So if someone's out there today saying, I'm struggling with anxiety, I'm struggling with depression, the first thing I would recommend is they go to their primary care physician and rule out that it's a physical thing. For example, I wrestle with low thyroid.
Yep.
If my thyroid levels are not normal, I have depression symptoms. But do you see how that depression symptom is actually a biological source?
Okay.
So the physical realm deals with those sort of things. For example, one of my favorite mental health tools is exercise.
Sure.
The thing that got me going in exercise is when I understood the effect it had on your brain. So I exercise. I go to my gym in the morning and say, I need a boost today. I need a boost in my mind.
Right.
And so the physical key is just going over. Some people may need to take medication.
Right.
And there can be a stigma around that. But I say there's no shame in taking medication for diabetes.
Right.
There's no shame for heart. Why would there be shame for someone taking a mental health mental medicine for their mental health?
Sure.
So,
an antidepressant or whatever is required.
Yeah.
No, exactly.
So that's the physical key, is there's things you can do physically to help.
Okay. And the last key?
Is the relational key.
Okay.
And so one of the stories I tell in the book is that after I was diagnosed with severe depression and anxiety, I felt extreme shame. Who are you? You shouldn't be. What's wrong with you? You're a pastor and you're dealing with this. And I found myself at the Rochester Public Library and I was searching for answers. And I remember just going up and down the rows of books and literally a cassette tape series. Do you remember cassette tapes?
Oh yeah. I remember 8-tracks.
Fell into my cart, and it was a program on dealing with anxiety and depression. And I went home and I put in that cassette tape, and on the front was a teaching on dealing with anxiety and depression, but on the back there was a story of a pastor who had wrestled with anxiety and depression. And I thought to myself, you mean I'm not the only one? And that was so healing.
Yep.
And that's the relational component, is just you're not alone. Others are walking this journey with you. I've found that this is one of the most powerful things and one of the reasons I wrote the book is hoping that I would be that pastor on that cassette tape to someone else.
Yep. So when you pull it all together, how do you get somebody, so they're in that blanket, how do you get somebody to pull out and say, I need to do this?
Yeah, I don't know that you can make anyone.
Right.
Obviously, it's their free will choice. I do think, again, being a safe place for people to be able to share. I think one of the most powerful ways is to share your struggle if you have one. But that's something that I've found is, I call it the victory of vulnerability. Vulnerability is a bridge that allows people to cross from shame to grace and to get help. But that's a big part of it, is just allowing people to, is it safe for them to share how they're actually doing?
Yeah, exactly. So is intervention at any part, where does that fit in this picture? So there's some people like my sister who was in this severe depression.
Yeah.
How do you intervene? Do you intervene? Is that in the relational component here?
Yeah, I mean, I think that first of all, for the individual who is struggling, I do talk about the importance of putting together like a safety plan if you're not doing well. And yeah, there may be a time when you try to intervene and try to get them help. Absolutely.
Yeah. We felt that was something that was really important from time to time through her struggles and through life and so on. That was a really important part of it. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about this book. So when is this going to be available?
January 6th is when it comes out. You can pre-order it, but it comes out January 6th. So.
Okay. Where is it going to be available?
Amazon, Target, Walmart. You can order it online, all over, pretty much anywhere that books are being sold. So.
Okay, that's good. So usually in the front of books, they'll talk a little bit about kind of like who's recommending the book or some of their comments on it. Can you recall any of those for us?
Well, there's two like mental health professionals who share their endorsements. New York Times bestselling author Mark Batterson has endorsed the book, and so there's a couple of people that are certainly supportive of it and see the value in it. Is this a pretty different approach from others that you've seen, or is it pretty similar, or what differentiates this approach from others? Yeah, well, first of all, it was written for people who are not readers. I'm the kind of person that can read a book for hours, so the chapters are intentionally short and to the point. But what I enjoy the most about the book is that at the end of each chapter, there's exercises that you can apply. And then at the very end of it, there's actually a checklist that reminds you of what you learned in each chapter. So you can kind of review it. And it was meant to just be a book that... It's kind of like the book of Proverbs in the Bible. I recommend people reading the proverb of the day. So if today is the 16th, you'd read Proverbs 16. There's about 30 chapters in here, and you can read the chapter of the day. It's the 16th, read chapter 16. But short, succinct, to the point, but also heavy on not just how do we read this, but how do we apply it. Okay,
so... people who are going through this, obviously, they're going to benefit from this book. But what about people who aren't necessarily going through it, but know others who might be?
Well, I'll say this. If you have a brain, you have mental health. So the question is not if you have mental health, it's where is your current state? My mental health is in a good place right now.
Okay.
It hasn't always been. This book is just for anyone really who wants to go to a higher level of mental health. And that's, I think, one of the things people may think is, well, this is for others. Well, really, I think it's almost for all of us because we all have mental health. I'm sorry, what was the question?
So what you're saying is this is for everybody. This book is for anybody. Anybody that has a brain.
Yeah, exactly.
So for everybody else other than me. Yeah, absolutely. Agree 100%. No, that's great. No, so the point of it is, though, that everybody can benefit through reading through this, establishing where their status or state is, mental health state is at the moment, and how to get to a higher point or a better point.
And I hope this is used in more of a preventative way, not just, if you do, I say it this way, just like a person in recovery needs to work their program, I need to work my mental health program, the 4 keys. So the temptation would be, I'm doing good right now. I'm just going to coast on this stuff.
I don't need to read the book.
Or apply it.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I need to keep applying it. So I think it can be read not only in a reactive way, as in I'm struggling right now, but also a proactive way. How do I not get that low again? Or how do I not sink? And if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yep. So maintain sort of stability as well.
Yeah.
Opportunity for growth, whether it's spiritual, relational, otherwise physical.
Yeah.
You name it. So that's all really important. So, well, that's really good. Anything more that you want to add about the book that I think people should know?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a lot of personal stories.
Okay.
I think people connect to stories, and I think it's it took me like 30 years to write the book because I've been living it, you know what I mean? But I think it's just, there's such a deep need in mental health. You talked about in the rural community. Well, just in culture in general, there's such a need that I hope if it can just help one person, I say help them to not have to experience the dungeon of despair that I did for many years. That's what it's all about for me.
Oh, that's perfect. Great way to end this. So I appreciate it. Pastor Steve, thank you so much for sharing more about the book. And again, available pretty much anywhere.
Pretty much
you can get it. And so we hope that you'll take a look at it. But this is John Munson with Rural Ruckus Radio and Podcast signing out. We'll catch you next time.